So kia ora everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Fiona Levin, the Sector Program Manager at Wasteman's. I'm going to start us off today with a karakia. Tu taua mai I runga, tu taua mai I raro, tu taua mai I roto, tu taua mai I waho. Kia tau au te Māori tū, te Māori ore ki te katoa. Haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Okay, welcome. Firstly, just some housekeeping. Just to remind everyone that our session today will be recorded and the recording will be shared afterwards with everyone who has registered, just in case people weren't able to make it. Also, a special welcome to those of you today who are not Wasteman's members. We hope that you really enjoy this webinar, and if you're interested in joining Wasteman's to attend more events like this, then please do get in touch. Wasteman's is the largest representative body of the waste, resource recovery and contaminated land sectors in New Zealand, and we're working towards ongoing and positive development of our industry through strengthening relationships, collaboration, knowledge sharing, and championing the implementation of good practice standards. Our 8 sector groups provide best practice guidance through leadership and resources on some of Aotearoa's most pressing issues. So things like batteries and soil reuse are some of our hot topics at the moment. But today we are here to hear 2 case studies on organisations making some great inroads into waste minimisation. I'll introduce each of the presenters directly before their presentation. So first up, we have Chris Grant from 5R Solutions, who will cover the glass transformer recycling program with Transpower. Over the past 15 years, 5R Solutions, led by Managing Director Chris Grant, has saved over 475,000 tonnes of glass going to landfill, which is the equivalent to 74 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of glass kept in circulation. It's quite an amazing amount, actually, when you think about it that way. What began as a vision after Chris was made redundant in 2009 has grown into a nationwide network working with partners to recycle up to 70% of New Zealand's flat glass. So 5R transforms glass into high-value products like pink bats, insulation, new bottles, pool filters, and even filtration systems. So welcome, Chris. I'll pass things over to you to get started.
Thank you, Fiona. And good morning, all. As we've had a quick introduction, I'll speed past probably the first one. No. Hang on. There we go. So as started in 2009. Prior to that, I was actually in glass with a non-for-profit organisation for all the curbside glass in Christchurch. So it's been probably close to 20 years in the resource recovery sector. But as we transition through the redundancy and then growing this little company into where it is today, a lot of hard work, but we have a big focus into circularity. And as we said, we're looking at how do we put glass back into meaningful outcomes. Just to give you an idea, we also export out of Christchurch, and that is to Malaysia and Australia. But also we do the bottles for the South Island. So we are the conduit from all the curbside bottles from Kaikoura down to Central Otago, coast to coast. So when you put that together, there's about 1,000 containers off our site that are going through the LPC predominantly, and either around the world or up to Auckland. As we said, we're located in Christchurch and Auckland for manufacturing, for glass processing. Christchurch is our sort of our head office with all the administration functions there. And then we've got a hub and spoke model. So we have 15 regional facilities across New Zealand, and that stretches from Invercargill to Whangarei. And also we have these other programs that are filtering in, which is one of them is the Transpower insulation one, and also windscreen recovery. As Fiona alluded to, 475,000 tonnes. Prior to 5R starting, virtually all of that material was going to landfill every year. So I think it's pretty good. And I think Paul, my colleague beside me, which you can't see, I think we're getting very close to the 500,000 mark. So there will be probably another little celebration coming out of 5R. As we go there, we're Toitū certified in our carbon reduced program. So just sort of give you the circularity outcome. We're collecting the glass. Then we are, with a hub and spoke model, we're consolidating, moving into our processing centres. And then our 2 main outcomes in New Zealand is glass wool insulation, or pink bats as it's commonly known, and glass bottle manufacturing. So complete circular outcomes from the bottles, and I suppose watch the space for the glass wool. So the Transpower project, the methodology that we developed for the windscreen recovery, just a little funny fact, we do probably 80% of New Zealand's windscreens, domestic car windscreens. They were landfilled up to that point, a very complex piece of processing that's involved to recover that. But again, we took the learnings off our windscreen recovery program, and that covers the whole of New Zealand. So all the major brands, Smith & Smith, Novus, Instant, Windscreen Direct, and another one we're working on for a corporate very soon, which will be out in the marketplace. So the leads us into the glass insulator. It's funny, when you start looking at different things like this, I never even thought about glass insulators or pylons or anything like that. And as soon as we sort of started this project, it was quite funny. Every time you're driving down the main road, you start looking at pylons and what insulators they've got. But so the project took probably about 18 months to deliver, and there was a number of stages that we had to walk through with Transpower before we actually got to infrastructure on the ground to actually achieve the outcomes. So they came to us with their problem and looking at what could we do to solve it. So before, the majority of these insulators were going to landfill, and they're comprised of two parts, a metal and a glass component. They were very driven, Transpower very driven to achieve a zero waste outcome, and reducing their costs, of course. So I had to have a commercial focus on this whole outcome, and then meeting their internal waste strategies as well. So stage one was, and this is the world of glass we live in. All glass is not the same. So bottles, TV screens, flat glass, glass insulators, they're all chemically different in their makeup. And I'm probably going a bit deep and technical, but it's quite critical when you're putting glass into a furnace that it has to be in a very tight parameters. So you just can't put any glass into any furnace. So there's quite a process to go through to break outside the norm. So glass wool manufacturing is 100% building glass. As we know, Visy manufacturing glass bottles is predominantly glass cullet, which is existing glass bottles converted plus our flat glass. So you have to stick within these parameters. So the first part was trying to get the technical data sheets from this product from the insulator from the other side of the world, where historically these could have been in play for decades. So we had to get the technical part. Then we had to work through samples and then send the glass component offshore to get tested. So that took 12 months, just to give you an idea of time frame. So you can't just go and crush something and put it into a furnace. So that was the first milestone. That came back obviously very positive. Then we had to design the capability of separating a very heavy metal product with a very large glass component around the outside. So while it looks simple, there was a few iterations through the team through that one. Then the next part was, and this is probably one of the key strengths of 5R, our logistics. So when you look at, we had to test the different types of logistics. So you've got remoteness and you've got metropolitan. So we had infrastructure local here in Christchurch and Auckland, and then you're basically in the middle of nowhere. So we had to keep testing and seeing what the efficiencies are in the logistics model. Then the fourth stage was review it with Transpower, because wasn't, while this program was for Transpower, it's delivered by their contractors. So we had to bring the contractors into the conversation around how was this logistics model going to work for them. And to give you an example, the start position of this whole program was delivered from a field technician up a pylon in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand, and had a string of glass insulators. So that was our start position. So then how do we migrate that through to our Auckland and Christchurch processing centres to recover? So it got, yeah, there was a lot of discussion around how could this work. Then the fifth stage was a fully designed program. Sorry, I'm just trying to read my notes off another computer. It was a fully designed program, and then we had to go through that aligned with Transpower's outcomes of total program delivery, from infrastructure through to reporting. Then we had to deploy the program, so that was procuring the infrastructure required to capture these materials and then deliver them through the supply chain. And then the last stage was about designing all the reporting requirements for Transpower of what was happening to the material, how it's flowing through, and reporting back. So it's quite it seems quite a simple thing at the end, which it does, but there's quite a big journey to go through. And I was just trying to sort of give you an idea of what glass recovery it's actually about. That is the technical parts. You just can't go and get glass and put it into something. There's quite a process to go through. So this is the program as it sits today. So a pylon with glass insulators on it, and then how it moves through. So we have third-party logistics. You can see the separation. So that's what it ends up being like. We've got metal in the glass, so we're recovering 100%. So this is 100% of 100%. So it's a zero waste outcome, which is in today's world, I think, is a pretty good achievement. The glass is predominantly going back into glass wool manufacturing. So this is a circular outcome as far as from a Transpower perspective when you put their lens on it. So their waste is going into making energy efficiency in homes with insulation. So it was an amazing outcome in that respect. Sorry. So what does success look like? It was the goals achieved, 100% of 100%, as I said. Dealing with the remoteness areas and the supply chains, and they, believe me, they are remote. There's no further afield when you've got a pylon in the middle of nowhere. Taking a negative and making it into a positive and twofold. As I said, full recovery, and the positive part is that it enhances energy reduction in homes. Transpower's waste is now assisting in the energy efficiency outcomes in New Zealand, as I said, with glass walls. The big learning is the technical piece, as I described at the beginning, with it's a very complex furnaces. While they're big beasts of equipment, are very sensitive to different types of glasses, and it's very critical. To give you an idea of what that can look like, in Visi making glass bottles, you've got around about 300 tons of molten glass, 3 stories up in a furnace, and the operating process is that the furnace cannot fall within, it has to be full within 0.5 of a millimeter. So what comes in and going out, they have to maintain a level of 0.5 of a millimeter in order to make glass bottles. So until you get into this world, it's really quite a technical outcome. We were very fortunate to partner. We got invited with Transpower to the sustainability awards last year, and we put that together, and we were successful. So we were up against huge projects of like batteries for holding electricity, but our project with Transpower came out on top, which was quite an amazing feeling. All that hard work and celebrate it. And then just a bit of this collapsible crate idea that we've developed. It's robust, it's efficient in logistics. And to give you an idea, we've got 350 of these crates designed for our windscreen recovery as well. So going right back to probably that idea of logistics, effectively we're managing about 50,000 tonnes of glass in New Zealand in a constant flow. So it doesn't stop, it's either coming in from a regional facility coming into our processing, or it's going out to market. So logistics is a big part of actually how we deliver the results. So that's it. I don't know how I went for time. Good.
You did good, Chris. You did good. I'm going to open things up for any questions that anyone has. You're welcome to put them either into the chat or in the Q&A. I had a question just about the actual program with Transpower. Do you know how much of their total waste that they were sending to landfill that actually just came from these glass transformers?
I believe this was a 30 to 35% waste reduction project, and in fact it delivered their first 2 years worth of their project for waste reduction.
Yep, just from the one thing.
Just
It's
on one thing.
amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. We've got my question in the chat. So thank you, Chris. Interesting project. Is it possible to put waste glass insulators back into the manufacture of new glass insulators? Is this something that can be done in New Zealand so we can become more self-sufficient?
No, there's no glass insulators manufactured in New Zealand. It's all imported, predominantly, I think, from Europe and America is where they generate. So it's a bit like, so all glass, but glass bottles is all imported, and there's no manufacturing even now in Australia. So it's coming from further afield. So we sort of looked at things with the least impact to the environment from a logistics part.
Yep. Brilliant. A question from Julia. Has anyone else used those collapsible crates? They look like a great innovation.
Well, it's a 5R design. So we designed that. So as I said, we use them for our windscreens. So there's thousands of tons of windscreens that are flowing through those per annum now. So I'm just getting sense check from my colleague about making sure I've hit the right figures. Yeah. So that's a unique design. That's again a problem solved from 5R is around how do you take post-consumer windscreens from through a supply chain. So
that's brilliant. There's no more questions at the moment, but depending on how we're going for time, there might be a chance to have another couple of questions for Chris and 5R at the end. So thank you very much, Chris. Really appreciate it. It's a great project. If you want to stop sharing your screen, our next presentation is from Charlotte Jones from the Lyttlelton Port Company, so LPC. So you would have heard Chris mentioning that. And Kate Gislison from Without Waste. So LPC, like many businesses, has an ambitious goal of sending zero solid waste to landfill. The company's operations are diverse, from stevedoring containers, container repairs, maintenance, and corporate services. Diverse activities lead to diverse and complex waste streams. In the last year, the company's waste reduction strategy has kicked into gear, led by LPC's Environment and Sustainability Advisor, Charlotte Jones, in partnership with Kate. Kate is the founder of Without Waste, a waste minimisation consultancy that supports events and businesses in reducing waste and embracing circular practices. She has managed waste reduction services for major events like Electric Avenue and worked with organisations like LPC and Auckland Port to identify diversion opportunities and implement practical, effective systems. Kate brings a collaborative, solutions-focused approach to driving meaningful and lasting change. So welcome very much, Kate and Charlotte. If you guys want to unmute yourself and share your presentation, that would be brilliant.
Cool. Hopefully you can sort of see that okay.
It's brilliant. Thank you.
Cool. Kia ora koutou. Thanks, Fiona, for the introduction. As mentioned, my name's Charlotte Jones. I'm the Environment Sustainability Advisor at Lyttlelton Port Company. I'm really excited to speak with Kate today about how we've been collaborating in the past sort of about year on bringing LPC's waste reduction strategy into action on the ground. So just the agenda for our presentation today, I'm just going to give a little bit of background around LPC and our operations, how we went about understanding our waste, then how we engaged with WOW to make a plan for one of our sites, and then some of the successes and lessons learned. So Lyttlelton Port Company is the South Island's largest international trade gateway. We facilitate the import and export of billions of dollars of product each year, including the glass that Chris talked about. So we have 3 sites. We have a seaport here in Lyttlelton, where I'm based, and then 2 inland ports, City Depot and Midland Port. We have 650 staff operating 24/7, and we have a huge range of activities from stevedoring, repairs, maintenance. We have some public spaces, quarantine facilities, and corporate. So yeah, as Fiona mentioned, the diverse range of activities mean we have a fairly diverse range of waste streams. And we found there's really no one size fits all to meet the needs of all our teams and all our sites. Back in 2019, LPC released the sustainability strategy, and like many businesses, we set a fairly ambitious waste target to reduce solid waste to landfill by zero by 2040. We set 2020 as the baseline year, as it was when we sort of first got good data from our waste contractor, and we sent 273 tons of solid waste to landfill. Although at that point we had literally no idea where that waste was coming from and what its makeup was. We just had a really ambitious target. We also set an interim goal of a 20% reduction in landfill waste, which by 2025, so this year, financial year, which has just been for us. So to actually understand our waste, the first step for us was to look at where we're producing it, and where our infrastructure lies across our sites. So to do this, we use the ArcGIS app called Survey 123, and we walked around all our 3 sites to look for every bin, record its size, its waste stream, the waste provider, to sort of help narrow down where we're generating waste and where might be some problem areas. And throughout this process, we kind of started to get a bit of an idea of how big the issue was for us. We had over 150 bins, which was quite overwhelming to sort of think, where do we start with our focus? Using the data that we mapped and some data from our waste provider, we could break it down into our operational areas and our locations, and to work out our focus areas. And in doing this, we sort of got to the point where we decided City Depot was a good place to start. It's one of our inland ports. It's a relatively small team compared to the rest of the company, so we thought we'd start there. So City Depot is a busy container hub which operates 24 hours, 5.5 days a week. We have shift work and multiple teams working across different areas, from driving containers around the yard, plant maintenance, container repairs, and washing. So at this point, we decided to introduce the Waste Champions program. So we got a representative from each different area of the site. And the idea is that as we introduce initiatives in education, they can go back to their teams and share that knowledge and sort of be the ambassador for the program. And in doing this, we wanted to use auditing to understand what waste we're generating and then use it as a feedback to the education we need to provide to our teams and feed that back to auditing, etc. And at this point in the process, we kind of realized how big waste is of a topic. It's a lot more complex than I initially realized. So we decided to bring in the big guns, and we called on Kate from her team Without Waste. So I'll pass it over to her.
Kia ora. Thank you, Charlotte. So my name is Kate, founder and director at Without Waste, and it's been an absolute joy working with Charlotte and the team at LPC. Currently, in the waste industry, sometimes you really don't know what you have until you lift the lid on it. So it all began with a waste audit, and we sorted through around 1,063 kgs of waste. Of that, I'll show you some pictures in a second, but when we say diverse and complicated waste, we definitely mean it. 40% of the waste, though, was able to be diverted in some kind of way from our findings. However, it's really important to note that, in doing this audit, we have to understand that that's really just a snapshot in time. And with so many different activities happening in City Depot, the sample size is something that kind of limits us. During the time of year that we audited, there might have been cross-pollinations of bins, essentially like, hey, this one's filled up, can we swap it with the one from this area? So all of these kind of things are pointed out and noted while we're looking at the actual data. But ultimately, it was a pretty messy day. Charlotte, if you want to skip to show the photos. So just from looking at these photos, it can be a little difficult to identify what exactly could be divertible. We started off with 2 3-meter front load bins. One was from our pre-trip inspection area. This really consists of kind of outside contractors coming in, and they had a lot of other diversion options available alongside this bin. The maintenance and engineering area as well had quite a lot of diversion options right next to this bin. And it really was a bit interesting to see how the behavior was playing into what ended up in these bins. So if you have a look, Charlotte, for the next slide, you can see a little pie chart about what we really found inside. And ultimately, like I said before, the limitations of what we were understanding didn't give us the clearest picture. Quite a lot of organic and dirt, even some asphalt that was from just a major project happening at the time. So using this data and also kind of inquiring further with the team at the Waste Champions, we were able to identify the materials that are the regular culprits in that area. And really, even though maybe it was a small percentage of the weight or the percentage here, we took it as a unique opportunity to bring it forth as an item to understand it better and see if all the diversion opportunities were really in place and how the systems that supported those diversion opportunities were working. How well were they working if they were in place? So leading on from our waste audit, we actually began a diversion analysis report. What this can help us do, like I said before, is take those materials that we know are common culprits and bring them into a light to say, what are the solutions that currently exist? Whether it's from your current waste provider, another waste provider, unique community solution. It really breaks it down quite thoroughly into all the options that currently exist. And we like to keep it New Zealand local where possible. So although it is a bit tricky, when you're looking in a landfill bin, there's obviously things that are divertible, but then there's also things that just shouldn't be in that bin to begin with. And that opened up a whole range of conversation around hazardous materials. And then further on in that diversion analysis report, you assess the feasibility of all of these diversion opportunities with hazardous waste, or whether it's being diverted to be made into a different material. We assess, how feasible is this in your situation, right? What kind of infrastructure is feasible to place in that area? Having these recommendations, we also approved a lot of what cost issues might be in place. So we say, okay, here's the cost, what's the feasibility of you implementing 10 of those bins at that cost? So it really breaks it down thoroughly to understand not only, yes, you can divert 40% of that waste, but how are we going to do that? What's the next steps? And if Charlotte, you want to skip to the next slide, you can have a look at some of these materials that were on the diversion opportunity analysis report. So like I said, some can be hazardous materials that really cause quite a big issue being in a landfill bin. Others were just tricky to recycle items that we really needed to further investigate, talk with local suppliers, and understand what volumes they were coming in at, which became really valuable having regular checkups with people from all the different areas. So all of these different materials fed in to that report, and we were given, really clear understanding of what our next steps needed to be. And our big questions from this came, what additional infrastructure is needed and where? But it's not as simple as just putting in the infrastructure. It's saying what system change, signage support is really needed to make that effective. But even then, I always say you can have the prettiest bins and all the diversion pathways in the world, but if your people aren't engaged and your people aren't, contributing to that solution, you've essentially gotten nowhere and spent a lot of money. So we actually tuned into what was so valuable, that Waste Champions network. And we said, okay, well, what areas and additional education and engagement sessions should we be running with our Waste Champions? And with our approach at Without Waste on education, it's really about looking at how the team is perceiving us. So we come in as waste experts and they look at us like, you've never worked a day in my shoes, or you don't know this operation. And that's very true. And I think taking that transparent approach when educating these kind of teams, that's when you get the best outcomes. That's when you get the best engagement. So it's not about, making them feel like, oh, top down has implemented a solution that I had no idea about. It's, hey, I was able to feedback on this solution. I was able to put my input on where this bin should be. And really, it's just about being practical because, ultimately, we don't know what's going to work best in their environment. We might know that they need a bin for their aerosols, but we don't know where the best place it is to put it. So having that feedback mechanism is really helpful, but you have to empower these teams as well. You have to make them, it has to be a bit of a level playing field, because if you are coming in and speaking a bunch of jargon and they're like, I don't even know what you mean by that, you're not going to get anywhere either. So a couple topics that we actually ended up covering with our Waste Champions. If you just want to skip to the next slide, Charlotte, that would be great. Yeah, so we actually decided to take an approach of giving them a bit of information around waste in the local area. We wanted to let them know about landfills, Cape Valley landfill, how long can materials actually last in there? So we made a bit of a game out of it. That was a bit of a fun experiment right off the start, bit of an icebreaker, and also taking materials that we pulled from their bins, giving it to them and saying, hey, how long does this material last? That really opened up their eyes and started the conversations naturally to begin uncovering, so what do we think we should be doing with this? What if we got a bin in for it? What if we found an opportunity to divert it? And you're able to really see natural engagement open up. You've given them the tools to understand this problem, and you're also helping to empower them on the solutions. Like I said, hazardous materials at the port, quite common. And especially, looking at the maintenance and engineering area, a lot of things that shouldn't have been in the red bin were, and also in the PTI area. So we decided to bring the idea of, what is hazardous waste and why shouldn't it end up in your red bin, to the forefront of our education sessions. What this did was empowered them with the knowledge that maybe they didn't have. Not everyone knows the dangers of having those materials end up in a landfill bin, in a landfill truck, And so ultimately what that did is educate them on the hazardous materials and let us have open discussion with contractors about what current bins they have, what materials that we saw ending up in the landfill bin that shouldn't be there. And then we're able to work with them on solutions to now implement new infrastructure. It's a pretty small team over in the PTI area specifically. So this was really, really easily done and is continually being able to be checked in on. Our third session, I think this one was really, really effective because organics waste was being rolled out across all the sites, adding in just in the break room, an additional bin for food waste. Now, what we saw as a great opportunity was feeding back to all the toolbox meetings and just having a bit of a roundtable discussion about what we thought went in the green bin, as well as the yellow and the red. So being able to have a really quick, pop in at a toolbox to be able to discuss what these waste streams are, again, linking in with their local environment and saying, where is this actually going in Christchurch? All of our recycling going to EcoSort, all of the landfill going to Cape Valley, organics going over to Living Earth. So we're able to kind of see all of these different pathways and paint that picture for them. So again, providing that knowledge to empower them, and then also playing a bit of a game to get them to guess. And I think that really brought forth the idea that a lot of people don't know, and it's okay to say you don't know. And that just builds on that team environment of asking questions and having that feedback loop. So yeah, ultimately it's been really strong engagement wins overall. Not only having the, waste champions. Oh, you can go to the next slide, Charlotte. Sorry. You're good. Having the waste champions has been a huge engagement win. But ultimately having all of these feedback loops, long going discussions. I guess I'll pass it over to you, Charlotte, to see how you guys have thought all of this engagement has been.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Yeah, I think it's been a really insightful process going through this with the teams who are actually working in these areas. And one thing I've sort of taken away from it is we have these waste targets all about reduction, KPIs around it, but really engagement is a huge factor in this. And I think if we work on getting the engagement and getting the buy-in from our teams, we know that later on we'll get the reductions that we need to see. Like, that's the priority every time we want to make a change. The infrastructure we bring in, making sure that the teams are involved, they know why we're doing it, they understand it, and they can provide feedback as well. So we have our sort of quarterly Waste Champions workshops, which have been really great in upskilling our teams. But one way we've tried to sort of keep it all live throughout people's day-to-day jobs is integrating some monitoring of our key waste streams. So one example you can see on the screen at the moment is desiccant bags, which come in on some containers before they get repaired. So we've been getting the teams involved with monitoring, weighing these bins, recording data capture, so they're really along for the journey. And the more sort of involvement they have throughout this, the more likely we're going to get buy-in as we bring in any changes and new initiatives. And yeah, like Kate said, all the workshops we've run have been really great as far as involvement. Our teams are very hands-on, practical people. They work, physical jobs. So being able to get interactive activities has really created the buy-in we need. So where are we at now? I guess just to sort of finish off, our 25 target, FY25 target, we managed to achieve. The target was a 20% reduction, and we've managed a 30% reduction from our 2018 baseline year, which we're stoked about. I think this has come from sort of a combination of factors, port-wide initiatives we've been able to roll out, like making sure we have organics recycling in every area, and we've had a few other sort of port-wide recycling initiatives around PPE and road cones and things like that. And then in addition, just the Waste Champions program and other sort of educational initiatives we've been rolling out to sort of upskill people and try and get people on board. We know we've still got a long way to go before we reach our 2040 target of zero waste to landfill. So the next steps for us are just making sure we have all the right infrastructure in place, making sure it's convenient. So if there is a diversion option, it's easy for people to use. They don't have to walk right across the car park to find the right bin. It's there and ready. And then continuing this feedback loop with our Waste Champions and our teams on the ground. And then also expanding the Waste Champions program to the remainder of our sites, which is going to be really exciting as all our sites and operational areas have their own challenges and their own waste streams. So yeah, we're really excited about the next steps.
It's really amazing to see, you know, each meeting something new comes out that we didn't anticipate, which I think is just that building culture of constant improvement and real passion for what the goal is of the organization. So that's been huge to see. And even if the waste isn't all coming port generated, which we see a lot in the city depot, we can always brainstorm on ideas of how to reduce that waste using innovative techniques. So
yeah, cool. Thanks. That's all from us, I think.
Great. Thanks so much, Charlotte and Kate. That was really brilliant. So I'll open it up to any questions. So I've already got one. Stephanie said, how did you go about finding your waste champions?
Yeah, good question. It was luckily for us, the site manager at City Depot was really on board with the program. So when we came up with this idea, he was fully supportive to give people time towards the program. There were some volunteers from some areas. Some people were potentially more voluntold, but are sort of coming around to the idea, I think, the more they're involved. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see a few key people who have really taken it on board as part of their role and continue to give us feedback.
Great. We've got another question from Julie. Impressive work you have done. How much does waste play a role in your overall greenhouse gas emissions, and is that part of a wider greenhouse gas emission reduction target?
Yeah, waste is relatively small for our greenhouse as far as our emissions reduction plan. Our main contributor is diesel usage from our plant operating 24/7. So it's relatively small, but we do, yeah, probably the driver isn't from our emissions reduction plan, but more from our separate waste reduction strategy, which we sort of treat separately. Yeah.
Great. I had a quick question as well. So you have done so much work in terms of training your existing staff. Have you incorporated into your induction then with new staff about the waste reduction processes as well?
Yeah, good question. Not specifically yet. Yeah, I think we do have involvement in some inductions when we have new staff coming on board, particularly our cargo handlers, which makes up most of our staff. And we do bring it in when we give them an environmental induction there, but reaching all staff, we haven't quite got there yet. We've been working on videos and things with our waste, primary waste contractor, WM. So we'll have those available to all our teams, but yeah, nothing sort of cohesive yet.
Brilliant. Okay, I can't see any more questions at the moment. So I just want to say once again, thank you very much to all the speakers today. So Kate, Charlotte, Chris, and I know Paul's got his camera off, but we know he's in the background there supporting Chris. I just wanted to raise awareness for a couple of other webinars and things that we've got coming up for those of you who may be interested in them. We have a recycle, compost, anaerobic digestion webinar in the 13th of August. We'll also be running a webinar 26th of August on the Mutu Tauranga City Council trial. For those of you who don't know about Mutu, about the resource sharing Tauranga City Council actually sponsored the use of it across a number of construction firms for a year to see the difference it would make. We also have a few webinars coming up later in the year on repair. So we have a Repair Festival Aotearoa webinar, and we'll also be doing another one for International Repair Day for the Repair Festival Aotearoa on 11th of September. We're hoping to have something to share around the right to repair legislation, which some of you may have put submissions in on. So hopefully join us for that one, which should be great. But if you have any ideas for any other webinars you'd like to hear from, please let us know. And for those of you who are not aware, we'll also be running a construction waste awareness week in the end of October, which will be the first time that we'll be running that. So we're looking for lots of partners to share as much information about reducing construction waste as possible. So please get in touch if that's something that is of interest to you. Right, I'm just going to double check that there was nothing else that I had to cover off. No, that's everything. I just want to finish off our session today with a closing karakia. Ka whakaerea te tapu, ke wai a te aia te ara, ke turiki whakataha ai, ke turiki whakataha ai. Homie, huie, taikie. Once again, thank you everyone for coming along today to this webinar. And also thank you again very much to Kate, Charlotte and Chris for the presentations today. I'm hoping everyone took away something, and I'm sure that if you have further questions that pop up in your heads afterwards, you might be able to get hold of them. Ka kite anō.